Welcome back to Bible Quizzes. We have 80 questions today. Let's get started. 1. How many children did Adam and Eve have? 3, 2, 4, or the Bible does not specify. The Bible does not specify. The Bible does not specify, though 3 are named: Cain, Abel, and Seth. Genesis 5:4. After he begot Seth, the days of Adam were 800 years, and he had sons and daughters. 2. Who among these was not a couple? Isaac and Rebekah, David and Abigail, Moses and Miriam, or Jacob and Rachel? Moses and Miriam. Moses and Miriam were siblings. They were not a couple. 3. What was the source of Samson's strength? His prayers, muscles, hair, or spirit? His hair. Judges 16:17. No razor has ever come upon my head, for I have been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaven, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. 4. Why did Solomon worship idols? His wives influenced him, he was influenced by his friends, he was tempted by riches, or he was deceived by false prophets. His wives influenced him. 1 Kings 11:4. For it was so when Solomon was old that his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not loyal to the Lord his God, as was the heart of his father David. 5. What sign marked the covenant between God and Abraham? Rainbow, lamb sacrifice, human sacrifice, or circumcision? Circumcision. Genesis 17:10. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male child among you shall be circumcised. 6. What did the master of ceremonies say about the wine Jesus made from water? It was the best wine, it was too strong, it was sour, or it was new wine? It was the best wine. John 2:10. And he said to him, every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and when the guests have well drunk, the inferior, you have kept the good wine until now. 7. Who requested Jesus to provide more wine for the wedding in Cana? The bride, Mary his mother, the host, or his disciples? Mary his mother. John 2:3. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. 8. Which book in the Old Testament has only one chapter? Nahum, Micah, Obadiah, or Haggai? Obadiah. The book of Obadiah has only one chapter. 9. Which disciple was hesitant to have his feet washed by Jesus? Judas, Peter, Thomas, or Philip? Peter. John 13:8. Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. 10. What did Abraham give Melchizedek when they met? Bread and wine, a tithe, servants, or silver and gold? A tithe. Genesis 14:20. And he blessed him and said, blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand, and he gave him a tithe of all. 11. Who was Keturah? Isaac's wife, Lot's daughter, Abraham's second wife, or a servant in Abraham's house? Abraham's second wife, Genesis 25:1. Abraham again took a wife, and her name was Keturah. 12. What was the condition of Isaac's eyes in his old age? He had one blind eye, he was nearly blind, he could see clearly, or his eyes were gouged out. He was nearly blind. Genesis 27:1. Now it came to pass when Isaac was old and his eyes were so dim that he could not see. 13. Whom did Abraham send to get a wife for Isaac? A prophet, Lot, his oldest servant, or his son Ishmael? His oldest servant. Genesis 24:2. So Abraham said to the oldest servant of his house, Please put your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by the Lord that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell. 14. What was Elisha doing when he met Elijah and decided to follow him? Praying, teaching, building a house, or farming? Farming. 1 Kings 19:19. So he departed from there and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him. 15. Whom did David instruct to set Uriah at the battlefront for him to die? Jonathan, Amasa, Joab, or Abner? Joab. 2 Samuel 11:15. In the morning it happened that David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah, saying, Set Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle, and retreat from him, that he may be struck down and die. 16. Which mountain was given by God to Esau for a possession? Seir, Sinai, Horeb, or Zion? Seir. Deuteronomy 2:5. Do not meddle with them, for I will not give you any of their land, no, not so much as one footstep, because I have given Mount Seir to Esau as a possession. 17. What did Isaiah say was on the shoulder of the promised Messiah? The kingdom, the key of David, weight of the world, or government? The government. Isaiah 9:6. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder. 18. Which prophet said, I know the plans I have for you, to give you a future and a hope? Jeremiah. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. 19. Who used salt to purify bitter waters? Elijah, Moses, Elisha, or Joshua? Elisha. 2 Kings 2:21. Then he went out to the source of the water and cast in the salt there and said, Thus says the Lord, I have healed this water. So the water was healed according to the word of Elisha which he spoke. 20. How many times did Naaman dip himself in the river Jordan? 5 times, 7 times, 6 times, or 3 times? Seven times. 2 Kings 5:14. So he went down and dipped 7 times in the Jordan. 21. Saul prophesied while naked. True or false? True. 1 Samuel 19:24. And he also stripped off his clothes and prophesied before Samuel in like manner, and lay down naked all that day and all that night. Therefore this they say, Is Saul also among the prophets? 22. Which city had severe hunger until the people ate bird poop and donkey heads? Samaria, Jericho, Bethel, or Jerusalem? Samaria. 2 Kings 6:25, and there was a great famine in Samaria, and indeed they besieged it until a donkey's head was sold for 80 shekels of silver, and 1/4 of a cab of dove droppings for 5 shekels of silver. 23. What did Saul throw at David in his attempt to kill him? A stone, a sword, a spear, or a bow? A spear. 1 Samuel 18:11, and Saul cast the spear, for he said, I will pin David to the wall. 24. Which was the last bird that Noah sent from the ark? A raven, a dove, a pigeon, or a hawk? A dove. Genesis 8:12, so he waited yet another 7 days and sent out the dove, which did not return again to him any more. 25. What did the divine guest say that made Sarah laugh? That she would have a son, she was very beautiful, Abraham would have land, or that she would lead her people? That she would have a son. Genesis 18:10, and he said, I will certainly return to you according to the time of life, and behold, Sarah your wife shall have a son. Sarah was listening in the tent door which was behind him. 26. Where did the Israelites find bitter waters along their journey? Elim, Horeb, Meribah, or Marah? Marah. Exodus 15:23, now when they came to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. 27. What food did the Israelites say they missed in Egypt? Fish, cucumbers, melons, or all of the above? All of the above. Numbers 11:5, we remember the fish which we ate freely in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. 28. Which king had subdued 3 kingdoms, resulting in a battle where Lot was captured? Adnizedek, Chedorlaomer, Og, or Arioch? Chedorlaomer. Genesis 14:3, all these joined together in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. 29. How many times were the Israelites to go around Jericho on the last day? Seven. Joshua 6:15, but it came to pass on the 7th day they rose early, about the dawning of the day, and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner. 30. What height was the Tower of Babel designed to have? As high as a mountain, as high as the tallest tree, as high as the heavens, or it's not mentioned? As high as the heavens. Genesis 11:4, and they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. 31. Who was the priest that David frequently consulted? Ahimelech, Melchizedek, Eli, or Abiathar? Abiathar. 1 Samuel 23:9, when David knew that Saul plotted evil against him, he said to Abiathar the priest, bring the ephod here. 32. Under which tree was Nathanael seated when Jesus saw him? Palm tree, fig tree, cedar tree, or sycamore tree? Fig tree. John 1:48, Nathanael said to him, how do you know me? Jesus answered and said to him, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. 33. What name does Acts say was given to the field bought by Judas' blood money? Akeldama, Golgotha, Calvary, or Gethsemane? Ekeldama. Acts 1:19, and it became known to all those dwelling in Jerusalem, so that the field is called in their own language Ekeldama, that is, field of blood. 34. How much of his wealth did Zacchaeus give to the poor? All, half, 1/4, or a tenth? Half. Luke 19:8. Then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Look, Lord, I give half of my goods to the poor, and if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore fourfold. 35. Whom did David call the Lord's anointed? Samuel, Solomon, Saul, or Nathan? Saul. 1 Samuel 24:6, and he said to his men, The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my master Saul, the Lord's anointed, to stretch out my hand against him, seeing he is the anointed of the Lord. 36. Which place was also known as Kirjath Arba? Jerusalem, Jericho, Hebron, or Bethel? Hebron. Genesis 23:2. So Sarah died in Kirjath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. 37. Why did Moses miss the promised land? He struck the rock instead of speaking, he broke the tablets of the law, he was too old and sickly, or he was not allowed by Pharaoh. He struck the rock instead of speaking. Numbers 20:12. Moses lifted his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod. Then the Lord said, Because you did not believe me to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the promised land. 38. What happened to the sons of Aaron who offered a strange fire to God? They were stoned to death, they were struck by thunder, they were turned into stone, or they were killed by the fire from the Lord. They were killed by fire from the Lord. Leviticus 10:1-2. Then Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his censer and put fire in it, put incense on it, and offered profane fire before the Lord. So fire went out from the Lord and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. 39. Who prophesied that the Messiah's forerunner will come in the spirit and power of Elijah? Malachi, Isaiah, Zechariah, or Joel? Malachi 4:5. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. 40. At what point did Zechariah, John's father, regain his speech? When John was born, when he wrote John's name, when he prayed in the temple, or when John was dedicated? When he wrote John's name, Luke 1:63-64, and he asked for a writing tablet and wrote, saying, His name is John. So they all marveled. Immediately his mouth was open and his tongue loosed, and he spoke, praising God. 41. Joseph said that he practiced divination. True or false? True. Genesis 44:5. Joseph said to his steward, Get up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, Why have you repaid evil for good? Is not this the one from which my Lord drinks, and with which he indeed practices divination? 42. Who mixed the blood of the Galileans with sacrifices offered to idols? Felix, Caiaphas, Pilate, or Herod? Pilate. Luke 13:1. There were present at that season some who told him about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mingled with their sacrifices. 43. What did the Bible say is present when 2 or 3 people gather in the name of the Lord? Spirit of God, presence of the Lord, grace of God, or angels? The presence of the Lord. Matthew 18:20. For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I am there in the midst of them. 44. What did Jezebel command be done to Naboth before false accusations were presented? Given money, taken to the palace, given high honor, or stripped naked? Given high honor. 1 Kings 21, 9-10. Proclaim a fast, and seat Naboth with high honor among the people, and seat 2 men, scoundrels, before him to bear witness against him, saying, You have blasphemed God and the king. 45. Whom did Jacob give the firstborn blessings among the sons of Joseph? Ephraim. Genesis 48:20. So he blessed them that day, saying, By you Israel will bless, saying, May God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And thus he set Ephraim before Manasseh. 46. What did Jesus tell Peter to do in order to find money to pay the temple tax? Ask a rich man for help, catch a fish, sell his possessions, or pray and fast? Catch a fish. Matthew 17:27. Nevertheless, lest we offend them, go to the sea, cast in a hook, and take the fish that comes up first. And when you have opened its mouth, you will find a piece of money. Take that and give it to them for me and you. 47. What was the relationship between Paul and Apollos? They were rivals, co-workers in the faith, brothers, or strangers? Co-workers in the faith. Paul describes Apollos as one who contributed to his ministry. 1 Corinthians 3:6. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. 48. What was the disciples' reaction when Paul joined the faith? They were afraid and skeptical. They disliked and resisted him. They welcomed him with open arms, or they ignored him. They were afraid and skeptical. Acts 9:26. And when Saul had come to Jerusalem, he tried to join the disciples, but they were all afraid of him and did not believe that he was a disciple. 49. What did Jesus apply on the eyes of the blind man he sent to wash in the pool of Siloam? Oil, water, honey, or mud made of saliva? Mud made of saliva. John 9:6. When he had said these things, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. 50. Jonah was Simon Peter's father. True or false? True. John 21:16. He said to him again a second time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? He said to him, Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. 51. How many porches did the pool of Bethesda have? 5, 4, 3, or 2? Five. John 5:2. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches. 52. Where did Jesus get the donkey that he rode into Jerusalem? From the Mount of Olives, from a nearby village, they bought it from the marketplace, or they took it from the temple? From a nearby village. Matthew 21:2, saying to them, Go into the village opposite you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied and a colt with her. Loose them and bring them to me. 53. Which person did Jesus ask his disciples to follow to get a place for the Last Supper? Rich merchant, a young boy, a man carrying water, or a woman at the well? man carrying water. Mark 14:13. And he sent out 2 of his disciples and said to them, Go into the city, and a man will meet you carrying a pitcher of water. Follow him. 54. Which gospel states that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God? The Gospel of John, John 1:1-2. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. 55. What did the soldiers put in Jesus' right hand during his trials? A rod, a ring, a reed, or a scepter? A reed. Matthew 27:29. When they had twisted a crown of thorns, they put it on his head, and a reed in his right hand. And they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! 56. What did the Samaritan woman respond when Jesus asked her to call her husband? My husband's dead, my husband left, let me get him, or I have no husband. I have no husband. John 4:17. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, You have well said, I have no husband. 57. How many demons did Jesus exorcise from Mary Magdalene? Many, 7, 8, or 12? Seven. Mark 16:9. Now when he arose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast 7 demons. 58. How many demons did Jesus say an evil spirit brings back to his host after exorcism? 7, 1, 10, or 5? Seven. Luke 11:26. Then he goes and takes with him 7 other spirits more wicked than himself, and they enter and dwell there, and the last state of that man is worse than the first. 59. Who was the first person to see Jesus alive after his resurrection? Peter, John, Mary Magdalene, or Thomas? Mary Magdalene, John 20:14-16. Now, when she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, and did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, Mary. She turned and said to him, Rabboni, which is to say, teacher. 60. For how many days did Jesus walk on earth after resurrection? 100 days, 40 days, 30 days, or 20 days? "40 days, Acts 1:3, to whom he also presented himself alive after his suffering by many infallible proofs, being seen by them during 40 days and speaking of the things pertaining to the kingdom of God. 61. What does the name Messiah mean? The sent one, the Christ, the Savior, or God with us? The Christ. John 1:41. He first found his brother Simon and said to him, We have found the Messiah, which is translated the Christ. 62. For how many days did Jesus stay in the tomb? 2 days, 1 day, 4 days, or 3 days? "3 days. Matthew 12:40. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. 63. How was Jesus' tomb made? Built with bricks, made of wood, carved out of rock, or dug into the ground? Carved out of rock. Matthew 27:60, and laid it in his new tomb which he had hewn out of the rock, and he rolled a large stone against the door of the tomb and departed. 64. What was used to cover Jesus' body during burial? Linen cloth, a robe, animal skins, or a shroud? Linen cloth. Matthew 27:59. When Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth. 65. What does water baptism symbolize? Cleansing from sins, burial of the old life, spiritual purification, or resurrection? Burial of the old life. Romans 6:4. Therefore we were buried with him through baptism into death, that just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life. 66. Why did Moses flee from Egypt? Find his lost sheep, to escape slavery, to escape Pharaoh's wrath, or to escape a famine? To escape Pharaoh's wrath. Exodus 2:15. When Pharaoh heard of this matter, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. 67. What was the ethnicity of Delilah? Egyptian, Philistine, Canaanite, or Moabite? Philistine. Judges 16:4. Afterward it happened that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah, and the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, Entice him and find out where his great strength lies. 68. Between Ananias and Sapphira, who died first? Ananias? Sapphira? They both died at the same hour, or neither died? Ananias. Acts 5:5. Then Ananias, hearing these words, fell down and breathed his last. So great fear came upon all those who heard these things. Now it was about 3 hours later when his wife came in, not knowing what had happened. 69. To whom did Jesus narrate the parable of the prodigal son? The disciples, the Sadducees, the Pharisees and scribes, or a crowd? Pharisees and scribes. Luke 15:2-12. And the Pharisees and scribes complained, saying, This man receives sinners and eats with them. So he spoke this parable to them, saying, A certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father. 70. What baptism did the Israelites obtain when they were under the cloud and in the sea? Water baptism, baptism into Moses, baptism by fire, or baptism into the cloud? Baptism into Moses. 1 Corinthians 10:2. All were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. 71. Who among Jacob's wives was buried on the way to Ephrath? Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, or Zilpah? Rachel. Genesis 35:19. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. 72. What was the condition of Jacob in his old age? He was healthy, he was strong, he was cold, or he was sickly? He was sickly. Genesis 48:1. Now it came to pass after these things that Joseph was told, Indeed your father is sick, and he took with him his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. 73. Who was Joseph's father-in-law? Potiphar, Pharaoh, Heth, or Ishmael? Potiphera. Genesis 41:45, and Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah, and he gave him as a wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. So Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. 74. Where did Lazarus and his sister live? Nazareth, Bethlehem, Bethany, or Jerusalem? Bethany. John 11:1. Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. 75. What does Golgotha mean? Place of the skull, place of the cross, place of the sorrow, or the hill of death? Place of the skull. John 19:17. And he, bearing his cross, went out to a place called the place of a skull, which is called in Hebrew Golgotha. 76. What did Jacob dream about at Bethel? Burning bush, wrestling with an angel, ladder reaching to heaven, or the golden jar of manna? A ladder reaching to heaven. Genesis 28:12. Then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven, and there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. 77. Who was the mother of Samuel the prophet? Priscilla, Peninnah, Deborah, or Hannah? Hannah. 1 Samuel 1:20. So it came to pass in the process of time that Hannah conceived and bore a son, and called his name Samuel, saying, Because I have asked for him from the Lord. 78. What did Jesus tell Nathanael he would see henceforth? The coming of the Son of Man, the establishment of God's kingdom, heavens open and angels ascending, or the end of the age? Heavens open and angels ascending. John 1:51. And he said to him, Most assuredly I say to you, hereafter you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. 79. What was the occupation of Zacharias, John's father? Carpenter, priest, tax collector, or shepherd? A priest. Luke 1:5. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the division of Abijah. His wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. 80. Which book records the contest of Elijah and the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel? 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Samuel, or 1 Chronicles? First Kings. 1 Kings 18:20-21. So Ahab sent for all the children of Israel and gathered the prophets together on Mount Carmel, and Elijah came to all the people and said, How long will you falter between two opinions? And that's all our questions today. Let us know how you did down below, then share this video with your friends and family to compare your scores, and we'll see you guys in the next one.